Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on Gran Turismo Sport. We're driving at Suzuka for this race in the Group 2 cars. This was last week's daily race C. It was actually a very long race, very close to pushing over, so you didn't get into the next race if you didn't finish the race particularly fast. But luckily we got some fast drivers in here. We're racing against Phil in front of us there. Very fast driver at Suzuka. Very often see him pop up in daily races when Suzuka's on. So his qualifying time, I think, was P4 or 5 in the top 10 stars. Mine was out of it because we only did a lap early on in the week. This was towards the end. This was actually my second race I'd done, or third race I think I'd done in the 08. We did a few races starting from the back in it. But I did try the 16 model, didn't really like it. The 16 model is still nowhere near as good at Suzuka as this 08 model Group 2 car. It's so much better. Also better on tyre wears, I feel. Tyre wear now, I feel, after they've reduced the power by 1% on the current BOP, seems to have helped the car out rather than made it worse. Oh, it's a strange one. It might not be as fast down the straights, but it seems to be slightly better on tyre wear. It's fairly interesting that they've probably helped the car rather than done anything other to it. But you can see straight away starting this race, we've got that dirty air. We all know about the dirty air in Group 2. Particularly at tracks like Suzuka with the really fast corners, and you can see straight away we're struggling to stay with Phil during the early section there, and also we didn't really want to push too aggressively on the opening lap, because if you kill your tyres off really early, these soft tyres really will not last. However, we're going to probably have to try and do something different with strategy, because we know that overtaking at this track is particularly hard when you're following behind someone. It's sometimes a good idea just to drop off out of the slipstream range. However, we haven't really got the opportunity to do that at the moment, because we've got someone right behind us there in P3 pushing also very aggressively. So we're gradually increasing the gap to him, but you can see we're going to get the slipstream down this straight to Phil, which is going to gain us a couple of attempts, and then we got the final chicane, which being in the slipstream doesn't really affect you too much because it's a slower corner. It will give you a little bit of tricky acceleration. The rear will be a little bit lighter, but in general it's not as bad as a fast corner. So this is the type of corner where we need to try and gain a bit of time back on P1, which we do quite well there. Managed to gain 2 attempts through there and then push on down the straight, and you can see we've actually nearly lost the slipstream to P3 at that stage. So now we're going to see if we can maybe see how we can deal with the slipstream and driving behind Phil. Can we gain any time on him? You can see going through here, Phil obviously a very fast driver at Suzuka, trying to be very gentle on the throttle. That's one thing you have to be with driving in the dirty areas. Try and be a little bit more gentle and smoother on your inputs, and turn in a little bit earlier than what you'd actually expect, because you just get the washed out front end and you don't get the grip that you expect from these cars at this track. And another thing, obviously, with this setting that they ran for this race, I feel like the settings were a little bit too extreme. I think this race would have been better if it was either a 1-stop or a 2-stop. It actually ended out being either a 2 or a 3-stop at this race, because the 1-stop was pretty pointless, because if you tried to do 6 laps on the softs, your tyres were so dead, and then you'd have to do 7 laps, I think it was, on the harder tyre. I think it was the mediums and the hards that were available possibly. So it was a medium tyre that you had to do 6 laps on, and then 7 on the hards, which wasn't going to work because the tyre wear was just too extreme. There was no fuel saving, so it was 100% aggressive driving, and I think that's where Polyphony need to have a little think about their settings, because I think if this would have had slightly lower tyre wear, we could have seen a more tactical race between the 1 and the 2-stopper, with maybe someone going for that 1-stop and just about being able to hold on at the end on the hard tyres. It would have made it a little bit more interesting, I think. Plus it would have been a bit more enjoyable with following other cars and trying to really stay in that slipstream. But at the moment you can see we're doing an okay job. Lap 2, we're going to go over the line with a pretty solid lap, considering we've got that slipstream to P1 and we're losing a lot of downforce through the corners, and in the end you lose a lot of pace. But we managed to go over the line. Did the final chicane very well there. You can see absolutely nailed it, and we go over the line with a 1 minute 49.1, which is a fairly good lap, to be honest. Considering we had full fuel on board, we're going to fast forward the action now for this lap, because I clearly worked out that we're going to have to try something different, because we're gaining a very small amount on him, you know, gaining a 10th or so here, but we're not gaining enough to really get too close. And once you get within half a second, it's impossible to stay with a car in front of you really with this slipstream. It's very hard to make a move. You can probably go for moves, but it's extremely difficult as we come to the end of lap 3. And I decided we're going to try something different. We're going to go for a very early pit stop. We've got the gap to P3. You can see we've got a pit stop gap to the car behind us, so we can go for something risky here. I'm going to go in the pits and put another set of medium tyres on after 3 laps of the race, which means we're going to obviously be pretty much guaranteed to be on a multiple stop, because we're going to probably have to extend this stint and maybe go for a 2 stop and extend this stint quite far, or go for a 3 stop. It depends on how the race pans out. But you can see it worked out there. We managed to just about come ahead out of the pits, ahead of the driver that was behind us, as we skip ahead to the end of lap 4. And will P1 go in the pits? No, he has decided to stay out. Now, I was actually quite interested with that. I thought he would have pitted that lap, but he's going to extend this now. It's probably a clever thing to do. It's probably what I would have done. Extend it until you get in that slipstream, and then he can try and give us some dirty air, maybe to lose us some time while we've got fresh tyres. But you can tell this race was really a very tactical race. It was all about thinking things through. You can see we're gaining a lot of time on Phil now. You can see how much we're gaining through the corners. This is the advantage of the fresh tyres over the wall, and this is where, again, I say what I said before about, I think the settings were just a tad too extreme for the length of this race. I think they could have made the settings with how long this race was, which I have to give Polyphony some credit for this. I've much preferred this race distance. Maybe we could look at, this is an idea I've had for Polyphony, to make either this race or another race a little bit more interesting, is get rid of this race being every half an hour, say make it every hour, so there's more time slot available. Make these races at least 25 to 30 minutes in distance, and have a 10-minute qualifying, so that we don't have to sit there in time trial and grind in time trial. So for people that just haven't got the time to grind their time trial out, it'll make it more enjoyable. And I think it'll make qualifying a little bit more intense and more enjoyable experience, having to qualify for each race. Make it like the FIA races, put that qualifying in, and also it should free up servers for Polyphony to, you know, cost cutting or whatever, to help them with more resources for the next game that they're developing, or for this game to make the servers run a little bit smoother. Instead of having them on every half an hour, you only need them on every hour, and have that qualifying session in there. I think that it would make this Daily Race C, or another race, a Daily Race D or whatever, a little bit more enjoyable. But you know, these are just ideas for Polyphony. Whether they'd ever listen to them, who knows. But you can see we've really caught up to P1. He's going to probably have to pit this lap. You can see deciding to pit there, because I think he knew that if he carried on, we would probably be going to be able to get a move done on him. Our tyres are so much fresh. You can see going over the line with another personal best of the race. And if he would have stayed out, we probably would have overtook him and then gone for an undercut again. That is the advantage of being in the lead. So now he's kind of getting the undercut, so he's got the advantage now. However, we're going to try and look after our tyres and extend this stint as long as we physically can. So you can really see now how the tactics in this race are really panning out. And this is what, again, we have to give credit to Polyphony, because the extra distance in this race was enabling more tactics. But again, I think that they pushed the settings a little bit too extreme. As we fast forward the settings now for a little while, as we go through a number of laps, just driving on our own, pushing reasonably aggressive. We're not going maximum 100% attack, because you're going to kill these tyres off. So we're trying to look after them a little bit. You can see we were going -2 bias. Now we possibly should have been on -1, I think, to try and save the fronts through the first sector a little bit more. But you can see now, as we rejoin the action about now, you can see on screen at the moment we got the gap to 1 point. He actually got in the slipstream through that first sector, but then obviously being in the slipstream lost him in the slipstream again, so he's down to about 1.5 seconds, but he's got them fresh tyres on. He's going to be well and truly into our slipstream again now. So the options we've got here now are, again, pit again. However, looking at the track map, I wasn't sure whether we should do that, because we could go for another pit stop, but he only pitted a lap or two ago, so he's still going to have reasonable pace. Would I be able to then extend enough to build up enough of a lead when he pits for the hard tyres? That would have been the question. So I decided that what we're going to try and do here now is extend this stint. The temptation was to pit this lap, and we've got the gap behind, as you can see on screen at the moment. On the top right hand corner, you can see on the mini-map, we had well and truly enough gap to P3 to go for a pit stop, put another set of mediums on, and push until like lap 11 or something, and then put a fresh set of hards on for 2 laps. That would have been an option. Now I don't know which way would have been best, the 2 or the 3 stopper, but I decided this time we're going to stay out. We're going to try and force him to run in dirty air to kill his tyres a little bit more. You can see just about hooked that chicane up, which gave us then the ability to make sure that he couldn't go for a move into turn 1. So this is a very interesting race. I love races like this. Very fast driver behind us, having to push, having to think about strategy, and this is why we love Gran Turismo, because we have the ability to race drivers of equal ability. And you can see my front tyres completely dying off there, but what you can see in the mirror, even though he's on much fresher tyres, he's got more than 2 laps fresher tyres, which on this game is the equivalent of 20 laps, because I think this race was, I think it was at least times 10, might have even been more tyre wear. It was a little bit stupid for this track with these cars, but this is Gran Turismo, the real tyre wear simulator, as we now go through. On the replay camera, have a little look just how close this is now. You can see the extra advantage he's getting through the corners. You'll really see he's able to drive a lot more aggressive, even though he's in that slipstream. The fresher tyres are giving him that advantage to get closer, especially on power, but you can see his car twitching around when he's getting on power. And again, that is because he's in the slipstream, so the rears lose a little bit of traction, especially through corners like this. He'll find it a little bit more difficult. You see again, we got a kind of a smoother exit, although we're not going to get as much acceleration because we've got more worn tyres. He's still struggled to get the power down because he's in that slipstream, even though he's got them much fresher tyres on. So can we hold him off now? And this is the lap we're clearly going to have to pit. We can't hold them off for any more laps than this. So this is getting very close. You can see we're going to have to hold the apex, be cautious. We can't make a mistake here. We're going to have to go to the left hand side of the track to defend from him. Will he go for a move around the outside of the 130R? This is going to be very intense racing. You can see he's going down the right side. We're going to try and squeeze him a little bit to the right hand side. We give him just enough space to fit his car. We chuck the car in and try and hold a very tight apex. However, he's gone a little bit wide there and ran off, and as he's rejoined, a little bit of contact, but no real harm done. He's got dirty tyres. He just about makes the corner there, but unfortunately the game says race over. And one of the current issues again with the penalty system that we have on this game is stupid penalties. That did not need to be a penalty. Yes, he did rejoin the track and come into the side of the car, but it wasn't aggressively enough to push me off the track. It was a little bit of robbing. That's racing. And unfortunately, the game has given Phil there in front of us a 4-second penalty, which is beyond daft. Admittedly, when I re-watched the replay, we did actually squeeze Phil a little bit close to the outside of the track, but he still just about stayed on the track. Might have caused him to run wide a little bit, but then when he's rejoined, he's obviously been side by side with me, and the game has just had a little bit of a moment, as per usual in this game. He's got a 4-second penalty, which is going to destroy his race. You can see as he takes a penalty, we're going to go past, and we're going to be well and truly in the lead. And also, P3 is going to jump him. However, I think P3 was due to go for a pit stop on this lap. We've obviously got the hard tyres on now, same as what Phil has, because we're going for that 2-stopper with a longer stint on the hards. And I was actually quite surprised at how well the hard tyres worked at this track on the last stint when your fuel was low. And he felt pretty good. So you can see going over the line, P2 goes in the pits, and we've got that gap to 3.6, 3.7 seconds to Phil now. So all we've got to do now is just drive it smooth, consistent to the end without pushing too aggressively. We've got the win from this. So unfortunately, the game has ruined a very good battle, because we would have both been in the pits and both been on the same strategy right next to each other. Now, admittedly, I think we would have found it very hard to get a move done with the harder tyres, because we both went in the pits together. So we would have had probably a better chance of getting a move done on the hards and the mediums, because I think the hards would have held up with a bit more aggressive driving. But I think we would have found it very difficult, because I do suffer in dirty air. So it possibly has just gifted us a win there, which is great in terms of getting the win, but it's not how I want to win. I want the game to be allowing racing. We saw very similar situations at other races since this race, which I'm going to be uploading with my FIA highlight videos. The penalty system has not been very kind to me recently. Maybe because we got away with it in this one, in this daily race, it decided to take a bit of a revenge motive on us for the next few FIA races. But yeah, the penalty system, since the update again, which was supposedly to alter the penalty system for the better, again has not really done that. What's happening now is side-by-side contacts are really penalised aggressively. Rear-ending someone doesn't seem to be given any penalties out, but when you're side-by-side with someone, which is what we want in Gran Turismo, we want side-by-side action, you don't seem to be able to even like literally rob another car, because the game will just say instant 4-second penalty and ruin the race like it did in this race, which is really not nice to see. We want to see good racing, good, close, fair, but you know, hard racing, and at the moment it's just not going to happen on this game with the current penalty system. So you can see managing to keep that gap at 3.6 seconds, so pretty equal laps on there to Phil, both doing very similar lap times with the hard tyres. We're going to fast forward the action now. As you see, we've got just a few laps to go, only 13, well I say only 13 laps in this race. It was quite a long daily race, considering I think this race was used to be either 10 or 11 laps. I think 10 laps it used to be, when they did this originally, but increased it, which I like the idea that they've increased the distance, but they need to then decrease the tyre wear because it's too extreme in my view. How 4 laps and the tyres were pretty much done on the medium tyres. They weren't even soft tyres. So yeah, fast forwarding again, you can see gap staying. You can see we've actually got the gap to 4.1, 4.3. It's varying. We actually increased the gap by over half a second on the harder tyres. So we maybe slightly better pace, but we wasn't pushing 100%. And I'm sure that Phil, with the fact that he had that issue, wasn't pushing 100% as well, because he's not going to catch up that amount of time with just a few laps to go as we rejoin the action at the end of lap 12. And you can see now all we've got to do is pretty much get this car, keep it on track for the final lap. We're 4.2 seconds, 4.1. It's varying, it's going up and down, but we've gained half a second since that incident, obviously, when he was 3.6 seconds behind us over the start finishing line. So yeah, I think both of us were not really pushing at this stage, just keeping it consistent. But one thing I will say about which kind of surprised me was how consistent the hard tyres was at the end of this race. You can see that after the out lap we did obviously 2 laps in the 49s, actually did 3 laps in the 49s, sorry, so 3 consistent laps in the 49s. Now the medium tyre would probably do 48 fairly easy at this stage of the race. However, I think it'd have a drop off of say a 48, then a low 49, then it'd be a mid to late 49, and then I think that the hard tyres would be faster because the medium tyres just couldn't cope with driving aggressive round here. They just died off too soon. And this is something that I think I'm hoping once we get the if we ever get this Michelin tyre update onto the game like they talked about a long time ago when they were at the World Tour event, is what I'd like to see is that the tyres have advantages for being on the harder tyre. So yeah, they might be like say half a second slower, but they're going to be more endurance based, so that you'll be able to actually keep that pace for a little bit longer, just to make tactics a little bit more viable in these races, especially the FIA races, so that we can see maybe someone actually staying on the hards for a little bit longer and actually maintaining pace and actually making the strategy work like that. Because at the current state, no one's going to touch a harder tyre if the softer tyre is only available, because the softer tyre is always so much more competitive. As we come to the end of the final lap of this race, we're going to take the win, although it's not the most enjoyable win when you've had someone receive a 4-second penalty for something so minor as what was seen in that race there. But you can see we're going to go over, by the looks of it, about 4.1, 4.2 seconds in the lead, which is an increase in total time from when obviously after the incident happened, but again we weren't really pushing, and we go over the line with a 50.1. You can see a much better drop off with the tyres there at the end of the race, and a fairly okay finishing pace as well. You can see just on the low 24s, could have been probably into the 23s if we would have drove it with a better strategy, but obviously on that first stint, being in that dirty air forced us into a slightly different strategy. But we take the win. Hope you enjoyed that race. Hopefully Polyphony can listen to some of the advice that people are giving them, and maybe make some changes with the penalty system on side contacts, and also maybe some changes for a new type of daily race, although I find it very unlikely at the moment because they're probably working on a new game. But anyway, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. Hit that notification button so you don't miss any future videos, and I'll see you all very soon. Thanks again for watching, everyone.